Lunch and Learn today. My name's Melanie Kanzioka. I've been an O&M at Savvy for 12, 13 years. I've been at the Tucson location. I got my master's degree at the U of A in orientation mobility. And today I'm going to be talking about guide dogs and guide dogs versus canes and just some misconceptions about both, and hopefully get some information out there to you about it. So often when people go blind or they start losing their vision, they're at the doctor's or they're talking with friends about it, a lot of people tell them, when are you going to get your dog? Or you need to go get a dog? Or where is your dog? Because they think that's the only solution. But it's not. So I'm here to say, forget about all that. Dogs are an option, but it's not the only option. And that's why I teach cane work. But also, a dog can be a positive thing if you're interested in a dog. But it takes a lot of work to get there first. So when you go blind, you don't just get a dog, or you don't go train your dog. So don't think that that's the only way. And also don't listen to people that say that. They're a little bit confused themselves and are misinformed. So there are a bunch of steps, like I mentioned, before getting a dog. You need to be a proficient cane user before you can even apply to get a dog. So what that means is that we at Savvy and other O&Ms and other NMOCs and other places, learning centers like us, teach people how to use a long white cane. And they need to be proficient users in it, so they're not just holding it, not just using it for identification. They need to independently be able to get anywhere they want to go using a cane. So they need to be able to get to the grocery store, to get to a friend's house, to cross streets, to use public transportation. And that's all using skills they learn for orientation, to be able to get around independently, orient themselves in unfamiliar areas, and to be independently mobile. So to get to these places, to move from one place to another. So why that's important is because to get a guide dog, most schools require you to produce 2 routes for their teachers and for their facility to show that you're going to be using the guide dog. You're going to be, it's not just going to be a pet and a companion. It's actually going to be used for all the training that they put into the dog. Because a lot of training goes into training the dogs. So they want you to show 2 routes that you might use, like if that's going to school or going to a restaurant, going to work. They want you to be able to show where you are going to take the dog. So you need to be able to show that you can cross streets safely and you're not going to put yourself or the dog in danger. Because a lot of people, when they think they get a dog, they think they're going to entrust the dog with everything and the dog's going to do everything for them. And it's not. You are a human and you're smarter than the dog. The dog does get a lot of training and does know a lot of things, but you are the traveler, so you need to be the one in control and the one setting up the dog to do the route. So you need to be able to do these things before you even get a dog, and you need to be able to show the school that you are going to do these things, because again, they don't want you to be in danger or the dog to be in danger. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I'm having to look at my notes, and they're set up a little differently because I had to end up recording in a different place than I expected. So the dog, I've already mentioned, the dog can't tell you when to go, and the dog does not make decisions for you. The dog's not looking at lights. We run a system here in the U.S. where we use street lights to tell us when to go. And when you're blind, you can't see those either, but we teach techniques as an O&M to walk across the street using sounds, using your environment, and to cross safely without having to see the light. The dog's going to be trained in some of those things as well, but you have to be able to tell the dog when to go. The dog's not going to make that decision. The dog's not going to see the traffic and say, hey, it's time to go. Or, that light changed, I'm going to go. You need to be the one making that decision. So I'm here to tell you some pros and cons to a dog, if that is the choice you're making. I think a pro to getting a guide dog is that it can be a great companion. You're never going alone anywhere if you have your dog. It also gets a lot of attention. So when you walk into a store, people gravitate towards that dog and want to be friendly towards the dog. That can be a pro or a con. If you like having attention or getting attention or are very social, that can be a positive. If you are a very private person and would rather not anyone talk to you and just want to be able to get to what you need, maybe a guide dog is not for you, because it really does draw a lot of attention and a lot of people want to talk to you or talk to your dog. The other unfortunate thing is they probably shouldn't be talking to your dog. When your dog is working, it is working with you and shouldn't be distracted by other people. So if you are choosing to get a guide dog, you need to make sure you're very assertive so you can tell people, please don't talk to my dog. I'm working with my dog and you're distracting it. There's many sensitive ways to tell people that my dog is working and please don't distract it. But you do have to be assertive and be okay talking to people and let them know that, because otherwise you aren't getting what you need out of the dog because other people are trying to talk to your dog or work with your dog. Sometimes people choose to get a dog because often when you have a guide dog, you are able to walk faster. It's a faster mode of transportation or a faster way of walking. Although this morning one of my coworkers was trying to say that put him up against a guide dog any day with his cane and he'll travel faster. So shout out to Brandon. He was saying that he could outwalk a dog. But in general, they do tend to walk faster. An example I have of that is another coworker I've had in the past, Kristen. So shout out to Kristen if she happens to see this. She was a very fast walker, and so they paired her with a dog that walked very fast. And when she first moved here, we wanted to maybe work on some routes that she was unfamiliar with, just because she was learning the city. So I went out with her, but often I could not keep up at all. So I would send her ahead. Meet you at the next corner, Kristen, because I could not keep up with that dog, nor her, because they're very, very fast. And I was at a running pace, and I could not keep up. If you're not a fast walker, don't think you can't get a dog, though, because each school is going to pair you with the dog that is for you. Kristen was a fast walker and enjoyed walking fast, so they paired her with a dog that did that. But older people who want to take it slower, maybe are just people going to the mailbox or going very slow, they're going to give you a slower paced dog. The schools are very good about pairing you with the right dog for your needs. But if you are fast, they can be faster than a cane. Often because they take you around objects that your cane might get stuck in. But that can also be a con because I am curious about everything. I'm a very curious cat. I want to know everything around me. And my cane's going to tell me what's around me. And a dog's going to usually get you around that object and not tell you it's there. So the example I always give is, there is no reason you need to know if your neighbor has grass or not. You're not mowing the grass. You don't need to care for that grass. There's no reason for you to have to know if your neighbor has grass. So with a guide dog, you will never know that. Your dog's going to take you past your neighbor's yard. You're never going to feel that neighbor's yard. You're going to get home. You're not going to know. But if you had a cane, you would know if your neighbor had grass or not. And I'm just that curious person who needs to know. So that's a positive for a cane or a negative for a cane, depending on how you look at it. The dog often also prevents veering. So I mentioned are crossing the street. You are going to be the one aligning. But sometimes even when you align perfectly, veering happens. Just because of sound or you get caught in something. Just slight veering can happen. Often you're able to get back right on track. You know, oh, I passed my corner, I'm able to get on it, or I heard another sound, and you're able to get back safely. But a dog's often going to prevent that from happening. If you align correctly, the dog's going to see the corner you're aiming for and get you to that corner. So veering just happens a lot less with a dog. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen at all. The dog can get distracted or be going around someone who's coming at you in the intersection and then get their eyes set on another corner. If you just align slightly wrong, sometimes they can get their eyes set on a different corner. So veering can happen with a dog, but it happens less frequently and tends to be a lot straighter line of travel. So with the dog, though, you do have to know that you are caring for an animal. So you do have to take that time and account for that time each day. A cane, you come home, you can put it in the corner, forget about it until the next time you're going out. But a dog, you can't forget about. That is a living thing, so you need to feed it and groom it, take it out to the bathroom. So sometimes that does take more time. And if you're a dog person, that time means nothing to you. But if you're someone who wants to just come home at the end of the day, that can be very long and tedious. What are some other things I'm looking? When you do get a guide dog, you do learn a few other commands and a few other ways to walk than you do with a cane. There's a lot more probing with your foot that's involved when you're walking with a dog. So it's just learning even more than what you've learned with the cane or different ways. So if you're someone who is like, I was just tired of learning, it might not be for you because you always are continuing to learn. You're continuing to learn to work with a dog. You're learning to respond to what the dog is doing and saying, which means you're always taking on new things and learning new things. So if that's not for you, maybe a dog's not for you as well. But if you're willing to take on the challenge, it is a sweet way to learn. And then there's always the problem of having to fight to maybe get in places when you have a dog. Usually people respect the cane, don't question. Is your cane allowed in here? Although that can happen. Some people do try to take away your cane or try to be the guide for you. But a dog guide often does get more attention, like we said. So some people question, hey, is that dog really allowed in this restaurant in the grocery store? So sometimes you do have to do a little bit more advocating for those to come in. And that just takes more advocating. But the rules, I mean, they're allowed to come anywhere. So a question to come in. If someone wants to retire a guide dog for non-cane travel, what do you suggest how to get one? I will post all the guide dog schools at the end. So the question came up that someone's interested in getting a retired guide dog, because that's another thing about guide dogs. They only are able to work for so many years. Our lifespans are longer than a dog's, but also dogs want that retirement time like people. They need that little bit of rest time. And we don't want to overwork the dog. And no one ever does. Like, you gain a really good relationship with your dog when you have a guide dog. And you can tell when they're saying, hey, I just don't want to work anymore. Like, you have that bond. You're able to feel it and respond to that. And a guide dog school will also help you come to that decision, too. If you have questions, they'll come analyze how you're working with the dog and tell you if it's time or not to retire a dog. And different schools treat that in different ways. So some schools, it is their belief that the dog belongs to them. So they sometimes take the dog back or work it out with you if you want to keep your dog. And then if they take your dog back, they have a list of people who are wanting retired guide dogs because they're interested in that type of dog and maybe an older dog. So there's many people on wait lists for that. The dog never just goes back to the school and lives out its life there. They will find a home. So sometimes you end up keeping your dog after it's retired. Sometimes it goes back to the school and it goes to someone who's really wanting a dog like that, who's on a waiting list to receive one. Sometimes you can pair them up with your friends because some schools believe you have the dog, so you have to decide what happens when it retires, if you're keeping it or if you're pairing it with someone you know who's looking for a guide dog. So there's many ways for that. And when I post the schools, you can check out the schools and see which ones have lists for wanting, or if you're interested in getting a retired guide dog, and put your name on that list because they make really good companions and really sweet dogs. So other misconceptions. Again, dogs can't look or read signs, so they can't tell you, hey, you're at the library, because they can read that. It may be a familiar place if you go there all the time, but you are the traveler, so you need to know where you're going and have those mobility skills. All the guide dog schools raise dogs and have their own dogs that they train. So some people think, oh, I have to find a dog to train, or can my dog be trained to be a dog guide? And that's not usually the case. They raise the dogs and they test them for a lot of medical things because they want them to work for a while because they're putting a lot of money and training into the dog. So they test those puppies that they raise and breed. They test them from very early on to make sure that they're not going to have bad knees or ligaments that go out or the wrong kind of feet or are going to get too big. They breed them so that they're very small. I call them pocket size. I think that's a term they may be used to. So that they can fit on a bus under the seat, in the airplane under the seat. So they're going to breed them really small, and they're testing those dogs all the time because, again, they want them to work a long time. If they find that the dog has any problems, even very early on, they'll they call it a career change dog. That dog's not meant to be a dog guide, and so it's going to have a career change, and those dogs go on the list too. Like, they will find a beautiful home for that dog because they're still a sweet, great dog. They're just maybe not meant for working. So you don't need to train your own dog. You don't need to find a dog. The schools will have them. And there's often types that they go with. They go with often labs and golden and black. And they also usually use golden retrievers, or yellow or black, sorry, and golden retrievers. German Shepherds were really popular for a very long time. Some schools have gone away from that just because they are a little more protective, and you want a dog that doesn't bark that much and won't growl because you need it to be a friendly dog. But they still use them because they're good sizes and they're really smart dogs and they learn a lot. But they also have some schools that train dogs like poodles, standard poodles, for hypoallergenic purposes. So there still are a variety of dogs out there, and each school is different. So that might help you choose what school you want based on what type of dog you're interested in or what kind of needs you have, like allergies. So I have another question come in before I go on. How good are guide dogs at exploring new areas that are never been before? Is it best to maybe explore new areas with a cane and take a dog with you to more frequent places? Well, it really depends on what kind of traveler you are. Dogs can go into new places, but they're waiting for you to advocate for where you want to go. So they're just going to keep taking you forward until you say, hey, I want to go check out this place, or turn right or left. So you are needing to make that decision. And so it really depends on if you're able to get back on track orientation-wise, if it's not the area you want to be in. And sometimes people who need to explore the area more for things like, hey, is there grass here? Because I'm looking for a park. The dog, you can't just say, go find this to the dog. So sometimes people do bring a cane with them, usually maybe a folding cane in a bag or something. You can take a straight cane too, but often they're not. So they're going to pull out a folding cane and maybe search for what they're looking for along with the dog. And that is appropriate. And you can heel the dog and not be using it as a guide during that time and be using your cane. So you can use both. And as the traveler, you get to decide. Another question. As an O&M instructor, what do you think some of the differences in teaching a student who has a guide dog as compared to a cane user? Often I'm working with cane users who are brand new to travel. And when I'm working with a guide dog user, they've had a lot of that orientation mobility. So I can use terms, orientation mobility terms, and they'll understand them. They've often traveled a lot. So it's just different concepts we're often working on with a cane user as compared to a guide dog user. With canes also, I'm able to stay closer if I'd like to be closer, sometimes so that communication can happen. I'm hardly ever in front of the client because I don't want them following me. I want them to be the one out in front, being the leader and exploring areas on their own and picking up things without following me. So I'm often behind any student I have. But with a cane user, I can often be closer if they want to ask questions or we need to talk or if I need to say anything. With dog guides, you have to be a little bit further behind because sometimes those dogs recognize you and want to look at you for confirmation or want to make sure you're catching up because they're protective. They want everyone to travel as a group. So with dog guides, I tend to be a lot further back too, just because I don't want the dog to see me. So I feel like I'm playing more of a hiding game sometimes when I'm working with dog guides. Breeds used was a question, and we did go over that a little bit. I know the video lags. So again, they're often larger dogs because like a Chihuahua is pretty small. You're not going to get a lot of feedback from that. The harness would have to be so large to get up to your hand because you don't want to be changing your position, no crouching over. So they're often large dogs, but they're bred to be pocket sized to fit under things. So they're skinnier, a little bit shorter than the average, but they're still large dogs. Often labs, retrievers, poodles, German shepherds. That's what you most commonly see. So another thing that I've been trying to say is dog guide, because you can have a human guide you, and you can have a dog guide you, and you can have lots of things guide you. I'm trying not to say guide dogs. That's often associated with the school Guide Dogs for the Blind. And I don't say the seeing eye, which is another term you'll hear people say all the time. Your seeing eye dog. And that's another school, the seeing eye, which is in New Jersey. So saying names like that is like saying Xerox or Kleenex. It's a brand name. So I try to be cautious and say dog guide, but you know, I mix them up all the time and say guide dog. But that's the reason for that. I'm going to post a list of the schools here because they can be all over the US. So I'm going to post them in the chat if anyone wants to take a look at that. This list comes from, I hope it came up. This list comes from NFB website. So again, it can always be updated. So talking about the Seeing Eye and Guide Dogs for the Blind, those are two schools, but there's schools all over the US. You may have to travel because there may not be one in your state, or you may just want to travel. Sometimes people like that. So when you apply for a guide dog, and if you get accepted and they get you paired with a dog, often you're going to a school for 2 to 4 weeks, depending on what you need. Sometimes they come to you, so there are exceptions, or there are schools that do that. So when choosing a school, that's something you might want to look at is, do they come to me? Do I have to go to them? How long is the program? Where is the program? Is that a place I can stand for that long? what types of harnesses do they use that helps people make decisions, because sometimes they don't like the leather handle or they don't like the plastic in the handle. It really depends. Each school has their own harness that they've developed, and it's often held in your left hand. So that's another thing that's a difference between a cane and a guide dog, is that you are using your cane often in your dominant hand, which for most people is your right hand. And a guide dog, you have the harness often in your left hand, because they want your dominant hand free. You want to be able to hold your coffee. You want to be able to shake hands. So that harness is going to be in the left hand. And it's often paired with a leash. So again, just whatever type of leash the school gives you, a type of harness, that helps you make your decision. Oh, having trouble playing my video. Oh, goodness. Okay, might be coming back on.